Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video, I'll be talking about my thoughts on Season 1 of the UK series, The Circle, after my latest rewatch. And I haven't been able to talk about this season yet. And it's a season that really made me fall in love with the show. I mean, it was obviously the first season of The Circle ever, and it's the one that I started with. And it was a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed it on the rewatch as well. Maybe not as much as I did the first time, but it's still a fun season with a really great cast. And the cast is the main reason why this season sticks out to my mind. But like all these other revisiting videos I do on the channel, I'm going to go through the show episode by episode. So let's start with episode 1, which was a great introduction to a lot of the characters here, with obviously Freddie being a massive standout. I mean, I don't love how they added the players here, where it seemed like players were just being added like 2 at a time, and they could only talk to each other for a short period of time. It just seemed like kind of an unfair way to get these people together, especially because by the end of this first day, they would be doing the ratings, which meant that some people obviously had more of an advantage getting higher ratings with other people due to them just being randomly stick together at the beginning of the game. But again, got some good character moments. We do get the ratings, which on this season, people were rated out of 5. It's not a ranking system like they would do for all future seasons, because to be honest, it's a better system in terms of from a game standpoint, as this rating system is just really broken. But I feel like it's more true to the social media concept of the show, and because I do like it more as a concept, but again, in execution it just doesn't work, and really the ranking system is probably better. So I do understand why they got rid of the rating system. But Kate, aka Alex, ends up being number 1, and through that, Kate gets to take someone on a date. He takes Mitch, which is another pretty fun scene. I know this is probably one of the most publicized scenes from the show. I'm pretty sure that this is what they were trying to get people to watch the show from. This scene of obviously Kate, aka Alex, talking to Mitchell and like pretending to be a woman the entire time, and like obviously this catfish sort of scenario. I think that's really what they tried to market the show on. And again, it is a fun scene, but probably not as fun as what it conceptually sounds like. But overall, this episode was solid. Again, a decent premiere, but it definitely gets better later on. Now for episode 2, where we got some things that did eventually change for later seasons that I kind of forgot about. Things like having like a news article every morning that the contestants would debate on for like no real reason. Though there are some fun character moments that come out of it. The use of confessionals in The Circle is just really pointless, but they do it a lot in this season. It's like, what's the point of confessionals when you're in a room by yourself anyway? Like, isn't that the confessional? So it is kind of weird they actually took the time to put them in a confessional booth and have actual confessionals. We do get the icebreaker challenge, which had some fun moments, but also some more serious moments. The meat and bones of the episode, though, comes from the announcement of the influencers, who are obviously the top 2 from the ratings in the previous episode, which are Kate and Dan. And then they obviously have the choice of choosing who to block. And obviously this is the main game mechanic of the show. This is used in most rounds. And I remember even the first time I was watching this, it was like pretty obvious that Jennifer was going to be the first boot. And she was. But before she leaves, she can meet one player, and that's where the episode ends. So I guess I might as well talk about Jennifer here, as this is probably the best spot to do it. I mean, she was fine on the show. I mean, I don't think her lie about being a doctor was necessary at all. Obviously, like, it didn't help her in any way. But outside of that, I mean, she just wasn't fitting in. And I don't feel like she brought much entertainment to the show. So I was fine with her going home first here. Now for episode 3, which was another fine episode. To be honest, the start of this season was probably a bit slower than I remembered. I think a lot of the moments that really stick out to me are from the middle of the show, kind of like episode like 7, 8 on. But this episode did start with Jennifer meeting Janelle, which had some heartwarming moments. I mean, obviously Janelle is there with her kid, so it was cool to see that reveal for Jennifer. There are some funny moments like the vegan salad comment, or Freddie mocking Dan, or Aiden just being Aiden. I mean, this episode does have fun moments, but the main event here in the episode is when Christopher joins the show, who is this old guy who turns out to actually be Sinead, like a 22-year-old. After that, we do get some more like real moments for the show. Things like Janelle and Dan bonding, and Janelle telling Dan her secret, and Aiden and Mitch starting to form a showmance and stuff. The episode's fine. It does feel weird that this episode doesn't have a cliffhanger, and they do that quite a lot actually in this first season that I noticed. which makes this feel even more pointless because there's no real structure to this show. And I've complained about this in the past, but I really wish they would have a set structure of like each episode would be one day. But the fact that they keep on switching on and off between different ending points, it just really throws me off. But now for episode 4, which, I mean, to be honest, without the ratings being in there, this episode would have been a complete drag. I mean, there's very little here for me. I mean, Janelle told Christopher that she has a kid, so I mean, that's something. The ratings results did give us some fun Freddie moments, as it always does. I mean, pretty much every time we have a ratings, Freddie does something weird. But this time he was like freaking out because he was last. But Kate and Sean end up being the influencers. I remember being pretty shocked that they did end up selecting Mitchell to go home over Janelle here. I mean, Kate at least had some sort of relationship with Mitch, while neither had a relationship with Janelle, so that was pretty surprising to me. But I do love how immediately after blocking Mitch, Alex or Kate throw Sean under the bus, and that causes a rift between them for a little while. But after Mitch gets eliminated, we obviously have him visiting Aiden. Not a surprise at all. But I did actually love the moment where Dan actually thought that Mitch was going to visit him. Which, I mean, again, this happens often as well, where Dan thinks that people are going to visit him, but then they never actually do. But let's talk about Mitch. Mitch was fine on the show. I do think he could have been a complete bore considering his archetype, but I did like his conversations with like Dan and Freddie. I did think that the Aiden storyline kept him relevant in the show. So while I don't think he's the most dynamic character in the world, he was someone that I wouldn't have minded getting further, especially because it feels like his storylines were just cut short here. Now for episode 5, which had a good chunk of fun moments, I mean, this is where Freddie learns that Kate has been after him for a while after Sean tells him, and this is what causes the Freddie-Kate feud that goes on for most of the rest of the season. I mean, Sean and Kate get into an argument over him throwing her under the bus, and they later reconcile. But during this, I feel like Alex or Kate, whatever, again, it's going to get confusing, are being super blunt and transactional about this conversation, and that really throws Sean off and causes Sean to distrust Kate even more. Which I think is a trend in the circle that I've noticed, is that whenever you act like transactional during these conversations, it never really works out. We see that in the US version as well with Antonio. But we also had the Little Mix situation where Kate didn't know who Little Mix were. It's like, I don't know who Little Mix are. Like, obviously I know they're a UK group now, but it's like when I first watched this season, I had no clue who these people were. But because of this, Kate does get suspected as a catfish. But this scene also causes Sinead to blow her cover by knowing that Little Mix just had a tour, which is a strange slip of the tongue from an old man. But the episode ends with Ryan joining the show, and he gets to go to the hangout with Freddie, as voted by the public, which causes some people to question Freddie's identity. And this scene was really fun, where we have Freddie lying about having a Range Rover, and it turns out that Ryan has one as well. And just seeing Freddie freak out and trying to cover his tracks was really, really fun. Overall, I did enjoy episode 5, and to be honest, it might be the best episode of the season so far. Now for episode 6, where we started off with the guys chat, where Freddie is, I mean, he's being Freddie, and him being so happy when Ryan talks about not liking Kate. We get to the start of this Dan-Janelle-Kate alliance that Dan awkwardly tried to form and tried to force them to talk. It was just kind of weird. The rest of the episode revolves around the ratings. So Dan, Janelle, and Freddie end up as influencers. And it should be pretty obvious who to boot here. I mean, it's Christopher. I mean, like, why would you not get rid of Christopher? So yeah, Christopher or Sinead was fine on the show. I mean, it was fun to see her scramble whenever she was asked a question, but she was so bad at the game, and it was obvious that she was going home first opportunity. But when we got the surprise announcement of a second blocking, where the influencers get to block one more person, it was weird that they did this here where there were only 3 other eligible people left to be blocked, with those being Aiden, Kate, and Sean. And I liked all 3 of them and would have been disappointed if any of them going home. One of them had to go. They had to give their final pleas, and they all did pretty bad. I mean, they all did terribly here, but this is another situation where it was clear that with Sean being super close with Freddie and Kate being super close with Dan, that Aiden was going to be the outlier and she was going to go home, and she does. But we end the episode with Aiden getting to meet Kate, which is a great cliffhanger. Again, I'm not a big fan of the cliffhangers, but I do think this is a pretty good one. But let's talk about Aiden. I thought Aiden was great on the show. I love Aiden. I think she's a fantastic character. She was obviously not the smartest person in the world, but that's what made her so much fun. I was upset seeing her go here the first time I watched this season. As to be honest, she's probably one of my favorite characters of the season. And I would have been really happy if she was able to make it all the way to the end. She was actually the last original member to be traditionally blocked from the show. So I do think if she made it through this round, she probably would have made it to the end. But now for episode 7, which again had some fun moments, like every episode. I mean, I think that's kind of redundant to keep on saying this, but we did start with Aiden meeting Kate, aka Alex. I remember being pretty surprised that Aiden wasn't upset, as I could have seen her taking it very personally, as it did seem like she really confided in Kate. But instead, she talked about how she was really rooting for him, and I thought that was a really nice moment. But after that, we do get Freddie and Kate reconciling, which came with some fun Freddie moments as always. We do get a message from Christopher, so it was fun to see people's reactions to him being a catfish, which did lead to the formation of the Three Musketeers alliance, with Freddie suspecting Kate of being a catfish. But after this, we do get a party for some reason, where we split up the boys and girls, just so they can introduce the 2 new players in Scotty and Hannah. And Scotty didn't have much to do in this episode, but Hannah was a major focus in the back half of the episode, where she talks about flirting with Dan, which gets Janelle jealous, and we get a series of events with Janelle telling Dan to stay away from Hannah, and telling Hannah to stay away from Dan, and we get Hannah talking about flirting with Dan anyways, and that's the end of the episode. Again, fine one. Start of a lot of drama that does become relevant in the coming episodes. Now let's start with episode 8, which mostly comprises of flirting, and talking about flirting. Starting off with the 2 newbies in Scotty and Hannah flirting with each other, and then Scotty flirting with Sean, and then Freddie flirting with Hannah, and later on we get Scotty flirting with Kate as well. Again, just all this stuff, I don't really care. It's my least favorite part of the circle. When people are flirting and they're both taking it seriously, it's just not as fun. Like, it was more fun in like the US version, where like Sammy would flirt with people, but then she would like be joking around like the entire time. Like, she would actually be laughing at people's responses. Like, that was more fun than this. But after that, we had the upload challenge, where everyone cooked a meal and uploaded pictures of it. I mean, whatever, who cares? But at the end of the episode, we get the pulls apart game. And this leads to one of my favorite moments of the season, where Dan calls out Ryan and outright tells him, "I don't like you." And that's followed by a fight between Freddie and Janelle, and later expands to Kate as well. Again, a lot of this is fun. Now for episode 9, which was a pretty great episode. I mean, we start off with Dan and Ryan going at it, this time in a private chat. After that, we do get a private date between Scotty and Sean. Again, who cares? But it does cause some drama between Sean and Hannah later, as Sean does believe Scotty in his lies. But it was pretty fun to see people reacting to Scotty's new profile picture, where he revealed that he was bald. We did get a good amount of strategy in this episode too, where the 3 Musketeers strategize to eliminate Dan. And obviously it doesn't happen, but it is interesting that people are starting to play strategically here. We do get the ratings here, which I did find strange that we did them so early in the episode, when they didn't end up blocking people until next episode, which would be the next day in real time. So that was just kind of weird. But in this episode, we get probably one of the more iconic scenes of the circle, and we get portrait mode, which is one of the most memorable games that the circle has ever done, where everyone is obviously drawing a painting of someone else. Here we get a lot of fun from Scotty painting Hannah as a witch, and Hannah painting a visual representation of Scotty's comments about his dick size. But after that, we get the more iconic moment where Freddie's painting of Kate causes a lot of drama, obviously between Freddie and Kate, but also between Freddie and Sean, where Sean comes to Kate's side. Again, all great moments. Fantastic episode as a whole. Possibly the best episode of the season. Now for episode 10, which again was pretty good. We got the repercussions of the portrait mode game, with Freddie reconciling with Sean, kind of. But then we get Janelle quitting the game due to her constant headaches. I found funny. I mean, like, Janelle is someone that came into this show talking about how she wants to prove that being a mother doesn't stop you from doing something like the circle, when isn't that literally what happened here? Like, she was getting headaches from all the stress between the circle and taking care of her kid. So I don't know, I just found that kind of humorous. But I never really cared for Janelle as a character. I mean, she was probably my least favorite out of the original cast. She was probably my least favorite out of possibly the entire cast. Most of her storyline revolved around Dan when it was pretty clear that he was more interested in Kate. So yeah, I just never found her particularly interesting. I mean, her having the kid there never led to any real interesting scenarios. I mean, she just kind of bored me. So that's that. But after that, we do get the ratings results. And despite having a very strategic vote, the bottom two still end up being Ryan and Hannah, two of the newer people. And it was pretty clear that Hannah was getting blocked, and she does. But what was really fun here is that Hannah got to meet Scotty. And this is pretty much the only true confrontation I can think of in the circle when they meet. I mean, I guess you can consider Precious later, but even that ended more calmly than something like this, where Hannah and Scotty are pretty much arguing the entire time. And even by the time they leave, they're still arguing. So again, a really fun scene here, but I thought Hannah was fine on the show. I mean, having her and Scotty join at the same time definitely brought a whole bunch of drama into the circle. And while most of it revolved around their flirty natures and their promiscuousness, it was still entertaining. But with that being said, having her leave does feel right for the show. I do think her arc was kind of finished here. Though I do think from a game standpoint, she does really get screwed over by the fact that the ratings were so early on and by them not having the safety that every other newcomer would have in the next round after they enter. Also during this episode, we have Ryan pretty much ending the Three Musketeers, where he calls out Freddie for like no real reason, because like Freddie was actually loyal to him. And like he gets freaked out because he's so low in the ratings. It's like, because you're new. I mean, your alliance was still loyal to you to a degree. But whatever. I mean, we do end the episode with May Reed joining the circle, getting introduced through the Your Profile or Mine game, which, I mean, it was fine. But it was funny to see Alex's, aka Kate's, real picture to compare against Freddie. And to hear Dan make fun of him was kind of ironic. But yeah, let's move on to episode 11, which continued on with May Reed meeting the group. And it was funny to see the status update montage in the morning with May Reed just being pissed off at how fake everyone was being. I mean, the rest of the episode, though, was kind of meh. I mean, we got the Dominate game, which was just filler. I mean, we got the start of the relationship between May Reed and Dan, which, again, is just really cringy to watch. I didn't love this relationship as part of the show, but it is kind of funny that Dan is pretty much a catfish magnet on this season. We do also get the ratings in this episode, but again, there's nothing of real note here. We do end up with Sean and surprisingly Scotty, actually, as influencers, which was surprising to see Scotty up there, obviously, as a newbie hasn't been an influencer yet in the show's history. But I thought it was pretty clear that Ryan was going to be blocked here. But we do get a cliffhanger for some reason. So, yeah, let's start episode 12, where we start with Ryan being blocked. And I loved Ryan. I thought he brought a lot of entertainment to the show. I mean, with his feud with Dan, him being really flippant on his alliance with the Three Musketeers. I found the ridiculousness of the psychic stuff really funny. I also just liked his presence on the show. I love the way he talked. We would go like, ooh, after like everything he says. It was so funny to me. But, I mean, he played this terribly. I mean, he deserved to go home. I don't get what he was doing, like bad-mouthing his own allies. It's just, I mean, come on, he played terribly. But after that, we do get Ryan meeting up with Freddie, and that was also another pretty funny interaction. I mean, I guess you could say that this one ended pretty badly, too. But a lot of it was just Freddie being very passive-aggressive, and that was just, like, just fun to watch. I mean, he was mocking Ryan to his face about psychic abilities. It's a great scene. The next good chunk of the episode focused on Scotty telling people his real age, which, I mean, really, who cares? I don't get why he lied about to begin with. But we do get some funny reactions from the people that he told, and Freddie and Sean. And then we end the episode with the final two players to join the game in Precious and Harry, and leading teams in a quiz game. And they do this in the US version as well. But I found the quiz pretty boring, though I do find it very deeply troubling that only one person in the entire circle knew the order of the planets. And the fact that that person was Harry is just completely mind-blowing. And it's so weird that he gets praised by everyone. Everyone calls him, oh my god, you're so smart and everything. And he even gets a message later on in his family message where his family is praising him for being so smart because of that. It's like, is that a thing? Is that a testament to the UK's education system? I mean, like, really? Like, this is like the deciding factor on whether you're intelligent or not, whether you can remember the order of the planets, but whatever. The initial round of the quiz does end with a tie, which means that we gotta go do a tiebreaker, and they end the episode on a cliffhanger there, which is like, who cares? But now for episode 13, which was, again, another just okay episode. I mean, we resolved the cliffhanger from the previous episode, and again, it doesn't matter. But I did find a question that they used there which was a trick question to be kind of amusing. Obviously, the number of Twitter followers Meghan Markle has, which is 0 because she doesn't have a Twitter account. So, again, I thought that was fun. Again, more fun scenes in this episode, like Scotty learning how to cook from Dan, where he ends up burning his sausages and setting off the fire alarm. That was fun. We do get more of the Precious and Sean feud, which does become a prominent storyline in the future. And we get the ratings, where Dan and Sean become the influencers. And again, it's so clear that May Reed's going to be blocked. Despite her relationship with Dan, it's clear that Dan was getting sketched out by her. And with Dan obviously protecting Kate and him having a good relationship with Scotty, it wasn't a surprise that May Reed gets blocked. And I feel like May Reed was a fun character when she was reacting to things on the show. But I did find, again, her conversation with Dan, that stuff was really cringy. And just, again, it wasn't fun to watch for me. And considering that was most of her screen time, I feel like she was a character that I think would have been a lot stronger if that stuff wasn't involved. But we do end the episode with May Reed getting to meet somebody, and obviously she picks Dan. So now for episode 14, where we see the meeting between May Reed and Dan, which was fun. I mean, it was obviously not the best catfish reveal of the season, but it was funny how Dan got scared when she came in, and this causes Dan to mistrust Kate, which does take up a good chunk of this episode, where Kate, or Alex, is doing a terrible job in his conversations with Dan, making Dan almost sure that Kate is a catfish. Also, during this episode, we get, again, a good amount of Freddie moments, like usual. Freddie making old jokes to Dan about May Reed. And this is also the episode where Harry decides to try to trick Freddie by talking to him about football, and that's a fun conversation. Obviously, because Harry suspects that Freddie is gay, which, again, this is kind of a weird storyline. I don't like this aspect of it. It's kind of weird, like, where it goes on the line of, like, is he outing Freddie or not? It's, like, kind of just weird. Because in another circumstance where, like, Freddie was in the closet, like, this could have been, like, Harry outing Freddie, and I feel like that's not great. But in the circumstance that we did get here, where obviously Freddie is openly gay and he is trying to trick people, it does make this scene a lot of fun, but again, not great the way it could have been. The rest of the episode does revolve around the drama between Precious and Sean, starting off with the yoga class, where Precious gets pissed off when Sean calls her out for not knowing the names of the poses. And the episode ends with the circle cloud, where everyone gives adjectives for each player and the players are shown the results. And during the results, Precious and Sean again fight over pretty much every little thing. And it is pretty entertaining to watch. I mean, the episode does end on us also on a cliffhanger of Precious and Sean as they are about to have a private chat. Again, pretty solid episode, a lot of drama here. Now for episode 15, which was, again, fine. But again, the episode focused a lot on the Sean and Precious rivalry, where they argued over the private chat, like we saw at the end of the last episode. And obviously, the end of the episode revolves around them meeting in person after Precious gets blocked, which was a decent confrontation. There were some other fun moments in this episode, like Freddie's reaction to Kate's fun fact, which I found funny, of that you're the oldest that you've ever been, but you're the youngest you'll ever be again. Again, just seeing Freddie just like being deep in thought after that was just really funny. We do have the cake making challenge, which, I mean, that was something. But we do also get the ratings with a bit of a twist, where the bottom 2 are up for elimination and the other 5 vote to block, kind of similar to something like Big Brother. And unsurprisingly, Precious and Harry end up in the bottom, and unsurprisingly, Precious ends up getting voted out. Again, Precious was fine in the show. I mean, she brought a lot of drama, and she was a main storyline during her time there with her rivalry with Sean. But outside of that, I didn't really love her. I mean, I felt like she seemed really indignant over how she wasn't given a chance. And while I do think that Sean was the main instigator of all of their fights, I do feel like Precious came off as petty during their arguments as well. And it was so obvious that she was going home at the first opportunity that she would have had. So while she brought a lot of entertainment and drama to the show, it was pretty clear she was never going to make that much of an impact on the game itself. Now for episode 16, which felt like filler. I mean, pretty much up until the ratings. We do get some fun B-roll from Scotty of him trying to catch a fly and him doing the Gangnam Style dance. And I would be lying if I didn't get a laugh out of the emotional game where Scotty and Harry were screwing it up every round. But we did get to the ratings where the only placement that mattered was the person in first, because the person in first became the super influencer who had the sole vote to block and does it anonymously. And this is a twist that does show up obviously in season 2 and season 1 of the US. But obviously this is the first time it was used here. And Sean wins the power, and for her it's between Harry and Scotty. Now, from behind the scenes, I do believe we've learned that there was an alliance with the original people at this point, where the original people decided that they were going to create a Final Four alliance to get to the end together. And obviously that is what ends up happening here. So again, it's pretty obvious that, again, it's between Harry and Scotty. I do remember being very surprised when I first watched this, seeing her block Scotty. But in retrospect, I mean, I don't know why I thought it wouldn't have been him, as it should have been pretty obvious. But after this elimination, he does get to meet one other person. He does choose Freddie, and this is a great scene. I mean, it's funny to me seeing Freddie being so openly flirty with Scotty, but also seeing Scotty really embracing this like big bro persona that he's built. And with him giving advice to Freddie on how to get along with people, I thought it was a great scene. And overall, I really like Scotty on this season. I mean, he was a great presence on the show. I think out of the people that joined late, he definitely had the most impact and was the most fun on the show. I mean, he caused a lot of drama early on with Hannah and Sean, and later on this season, he calmed down and just seemed like a chill, likable guy. And he had some fun character moments, like him burning the sausages and his random dances and stuff. I mean, like, towards the end of the season, I mean, he was probably one of my favorite characters remaining. Now for episode 17, which again was a solid episode. We started off with people thinking Harry was the super influencer, until Sean does eventually tell Freddie the truth, which does get a funny reaction from him. We then get the Killer Questions game, which did give us some fighting between Freddie and Harry over Harry thinking Freddie is gay, which, again, he was correct. But again, kind of a sticky situation. After that, we got family videos, which I don't care about. This was all filler. It doesn't matter. But immediately after that, we do get the ratings, where the least popular person is instantly blocked, and to no surprise, it's Harry. And he does get to meet someone. He meets Freddie, which I actually forgot about. I did not realize that he got to meet someone. I really didn't think that was the case. But yeah, he met Freddie, and I thought that was a fun interaction, with Freddie completely owning to all of his lies. And might as well talk about Harry here, who I thought was fine in the show. And I think he's someone that would have been a lot better of a character if he entered early. I mean, to me, Harry and Mitchell are pretty much the same character. But even with that being said, I mean, he did have some fun storylines in this episode. Obviously, like the storyline with Freddie, pretty great. I mean, he was just really fine on the show. But now for the finale, which has the highest highs of the entire franchise, but it also drags a lot when we get to the live portion of it. We started off with the final ratings, which we don't get to see any of the ratings, so it doesn't really matter. But immediately after that, we do get the meetup. And this is the best moment in the history of the franchise, where Alex and Dan finally meet face to face. It's fantastic. It really is. Just the look on Dan's face is probably the best reaction shot to anything ever in the history of reality shows. Like, just to see the dread on his face when he slowly starts to realize that this girl that he's been flirting with for a while now, this girl that he's pretty much fallen in love with, it seems like, turns out to be a guy. Again, it's a great scene. It really is. And then with Alex being really timid while Dan like airs his frustrations, it's so great. And we do get some more fun interactions after Sean and Freddie enter as well. But after this, we do spend the rest of the episode in the live section of the show, where we get a lot of interviews with the block players, then interviews with each of the final four. It just really drags. It's really boring. And then we get the winner reveal, where Alex wins the game with no preamble, which, again, very anticlimactic. They didn't even bother to say who was second, third, or fourth. They just went straight to the win. And I do feel like Alex's win is pretty interesting, as everyone here was playing tactfully, or at least most people here were playing tactfully. Obviously, Alex and Freddie were both playing extremely tactfully, both rating people ones, except for one person as a 2, as that's part of the rules in this first season, is that you can't rate everybody a 1. Sean does it somewhat tactfully. I mean, again, not as much where she doesn't rate people 1s, but she does do a similar style of rating system. But Dan is the only one here that votes genuinely. And because of that, he essentially votes on the winner. That's essentially what he's doing here. Whoever he rates the highest wins the season, because of how everyone else voted. Everyone else is so low that his votes are a determining factor. And obviously, as you would expect, he rates Kate high. Kate wins the season, aka Alex. And this does show a massive flaw in the Circle's rating system, I do feel like. Because, like, obviously the Circle, they originally planned for the most popular person winning the season, but by having this system here, it makes it more likely that the least popular person wins this season, because this makes it way too easy to rate all the popular people ones while giving the least popular person the next highest score, which leads to their win. And again, I do think the ranking system is a better system, because I do think the ranking system leads to a bit more of a more genuine result. But after this, we do get the Viewers Champion, obviously the fan favorite award, and that also goes to Alex, which I did wish Freddie won that. I mean, again, for me, this season, it lives and dies with Freddie. If you don't like Freddie, I think your enjoyment of the season is significantly less. But I mean, again, I loved Freddie. He didn't win. It's a shame, but I do get why Alex won. Obviously, he was kind of like a rootable figure on this season for the public, so it is what it is. But I'll start talking about the cast, starting with the 4th place finisher in Dan. And I like Dan. I mean, while he did play with his emotions and preach directness when he was being pretty hypocritical about it at points, he was a massive figure on the season, obviously with his relationship with Kate being the most memorable part of his run, and leads obviously to the best moment in the series for me. But outside of that, he had some fun reactions to things. He did have great interactions with people like Ryan and Freddie. So I do think Dan was a perfect fit on the season. Definitely one of the figures that does stand out to my mind when I look back on the season. Now for Sean, who was another good character for the show. I mean, while not as dynamic as a Freddie, she did play her part on the season pretty well. She had a lot of great character moments, had a lot of great interactions with people like Scotty and Precious, and obviously Freddie. She was the most consistently highly rated player, despite some really misguided strategy on her end, where I do think her getting rid of Scotty was a bad move for her, as I do think if Scotty was part of the final ratings, I do think it's very likely that Sean ends up winning the season. But then again, obviously, it was pretty clear that people weren't playing optimally here. Now for Freddie, who, again, was so great. I mean, this season wouldn't be what it is without Freddie. I mean, for me, he's up there with the greatest characters in reality TV history. I mean, his constant lies were really funny. He did play the game strategically at points. He had fun interactions with pretty much everybody. I mean, his reactions were so great. He was a fantastic character. I do wish he would have won something to be rewarded for that, but obviously, it wasn't in the cards. Freddie's a great character. If there's any player from the circle that I would like to see back on the circle, again, despite how the format doesn't really lend itself to an all-star season, I think Freddie is that character. It would be really fun to see him back. And then finally, let's talk about Kate, or Alex. And I think he was a lot of fun for the first half of the season. Something I noticed, though, on this rewatch was that I felt like he felt very deflated during the second half of the season. I mean, he starts telling Dan to, stop protecting him, which is obviously a terrible strategic move. I do think he starts playing very emotionally, especially when it revolves around Dan. But I did find him as a character to also be just less entertaining around this time. I don't know, I just found him to be pretty dull. I mean, outside the fact that he was playing a catfish, he was just fine. Again, he was a lot of fun in the first half. In the first half, where he was kind of just lying his ass off to take off the stink of being a catfish, I thought that was a lot of fun. But here, towards the back half of the season, it wasn't as great. But I do think his win was a satisfying outcome for the show as a whole, especially showing that a catfish can win the game. And obviously, when you think of a catfish on the circle, I mean, obviously Kate is the first one you think of. So he is a prominent figure on the show, despite me thinking in reality that he wasn't as entertaining as I initially remembered him being. So that's the entire season, which again, I really do love. I do think this is a strong season, but I do think I liked it a bit less than I initially did. I do think some parts were slower, but I think that's probably just more of a reaction to just rewatching an 18-episode reality show. A lot of the reason why I think this season is great is, again, because of its cast. I think its cast has so many characters that just stick out to my mind. From Freddie, to Alex, to Dan, to Sean, to Scotty, to Ryan, to Aiden, Precious, even to Harry has his moments. Again, I think this is a very strong cast, and that's what makes the season as good as it is, but it does falter in a lot of other aspects that do get fixed in future seasons. I mean, some of them do. I mean, some things get worse in future seasons, which we'll talk about later. But those are my thoughts for season 1. I mean, as I just mentioned, I am considering doing a video for this for season 2, which I am planning on rewatching as well. So again, why not do a video about it? I mean, I did obviously do a review of season 2 when that season came out, but I had a different style of view at that point where I talked about the season more generally. I would like to do the episode by episode sort of thing that I did with this season here. So why not? I might do that video. That'll be in the future. But for now, that's the video. Thank you for watching.